Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are completely dismantling everything you thought you knew about the ancient framework of the five elements. We're digging into some fascinating source material that poses a massive paradigm shift. Instead of mystical building blocks, what if these elements are actually a remarkably modern, highly sophisticated model of systems theory and homeostasis? If you want to understand how your physical and emotional health are deeply interconnected and how you literally have a built-in mechanism to control it all, you're in the exact right place. So let's jump right in.
Okay, so when you hear the five elements, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, you probably picture them as literal, static things, right? A chunk of wood, a flickering flame, an actual puddle of water. But what if we've been misinterpreting the very foundation of this entire framework? What if they aren't elements at all? Our source material today suggests they are absolutely not things. They are dynamic vectors of movement.
You see, unlike the traditional Western elemental view, which is basically about classifying static materials to figure out what things are made of, this Eastern framework is entirely different. It operates as a super sophisticated systems theory model. It focuses purely on processes and relationships. It's all about how things move, how they interact, and how they transform. Basically, it's a map of verbs, not a list of nouns.
This source text puts it brilliantly. It says, chi is the root. The five elements are the application. They are not five things, but a web forever pulling at each other. That is huge. The elements are just recognizable patterns of movement within this universal web. Wood is an ascending, outward expansion. Metal is a descending, inward gathering. Water is a hiding, storing phase. They are continuously interacting, constantly pushing and pulling against each other, just to maintain order.
Section 1. The Architecture of Balance, Setting the Public Axioms. Let's dive right into this and define the absolute baseline rules of how this dynamic system operates.
Our very first foundational axiom is chi. And look, we really need to drop the whole mystical glowing energy field trope right now. In this systemic context, chi is simply defined as the single ultimate reality, and its fundamental state of existence is endless, non-stop motion. It's the concept of continuous change as the absolute baseline of all existence. Literally nothing is ever truly still.
Next up, we have yin-yang. And much like qi, yin-yang gets so incredibly misunderstood as two separate, frozen states, like black and white, or hot and cold. But according to the text, it's actually the fundamental binary framework of that continuous movement. It is the law of how this motion endlessly ebbs, flows, and transforms. Think of it as the constant oscillation between growth and consumption. It's almost like the binary code of ones and zeros that writes the software for all movement.
Building right on top of that binary, the five elements, or Wu Jing, is merely a more precise categorization of those exact dynamic processes. If yin-yang is the fundamental binary code, the five elements are the detailed relational rules. They describe exactly how these movements generate and restrict one another. It's literally a blueprint of how a system, like your own human body, self-regulates to keep from spinning entirely out of control.
Which brings us to a really crucial point. Balance is absolutely not some frozen, peaceful state of resting. It's highly active. Balance is nothing but microscopic, constant correction. Think about riding a bicycle. When you're riding in a straight line, you aren't actually keeping those handlebars perfectly still, are you? No way. You're making thousands of microscopic, continuous corrections, shifting your weight left and right just to stay upright. That continuous, high-frequency correction, that is what this framework calls balance.
And our source maps out this exact systemic balance across four distinct levels of homeostasis. Level 1 is that healthy oscillation, the bike rider making normal micro-corrections where your reserves are totally untouched. Level 2 is minor compensation, where normal regulation gets a bit overwhelmed, kind of like riding into a strong gust of wind and the ratios shift. Level 3 is deep stress. This is where things get dicey, and the system has to actually borrow from your deep core reserves just to survive. And finally, level 4 is total structural collapse, where those deep reserves are completely empty, leading to an irreversible breakdown.
Section 2. The buffer analogy. How your body borrows time. Let's really look at how our bodies mask this decline. To really wrap our heads around how the body manages this before completely collapsing, the text uses a brilliant modern analogy, a chemical buffer solution. Just like a chemical buffer uses hidden reserves to neutralize disturbances, our bodies do the exact same thing. In step 1, fluctuations are absorbed effortlessly. You neutralize the stress, you feel totally fine. In step 2, you're near the edge.
Now, on the surface, you look fine. Your lab results might even look perfectly normal, but your deep foundational reserves are secretly draining away. Then, step 3. You go over capacity. The reserves are finally empty, and just like a chemical buffer running out, the pH drops off a cliff. This is exactly why you might feel 100% fine right up until the very moment your reserves run dry and the collapse happens.
Moving to Section 3, the mind-body loop, two sides of one coin.
What's absolutely fascinating here is how these exact same physical rules map flawlessly onto our mental and emotional health. We so often treat psychology and physiology as totally separate things, but this text explicitly shows they are two sides of the exact same coin. Have you ever been so angry you literally felt it boiling in your body? That's because the liver's physical function and the emotional state of free-flowing feelings, or anger, are linked in a single closed-loop network. The heart's physical pumping and your conscious anxiety are tied together. An overactive intellect or constant overthinking literally drains the physical energy of your digestive system, the spleen. Treating the body treats the mind, because they are undeniably synchronized.
Section 4. The manual override, taking control of the system.
This brings us to a really massive question. If our physical and emotional health operates as this complex, closed-loop autonomic system that's constantly managing its own homeostasis, how can we possibly intervene when things get stressful? Think about your major organ systems for a second. Your heartbeat, your digestion speed, liver filtration, kidney function, hormonal rhythms. Literally none of them accept conscious manual commands. You can't just sit there and tell your liver to filter toxins 10% faster, right? They are entirely closed off from your conscious control.
But here is the absolute game changer. Out of all these insanely complex internal systems, only the lungs have a built-in manual override. Your lungs run automatically in the background all day long, just like your heartbeat. But unlike your heartbeat, you can consciously step in, grab the wheel, and control the rhythm, the depth, and the pace of your breathing at any given second. It is literally the only physiological gateway that gives you conscious control over an autonomic process. Because of this, breathing acts as your direct physical lever to manually intervene. In step 1, when you're healthy, you don't even notice your breath. But in step 2, when stress rises and your liver and heart start racing, remember that mind-body loop we just talked about? You can take conscious, deep, downward breaths. Because the lungs physically sit above the other organs in this framework, deeply extending your exhales acts as a physical brake. It literally forces the system from a sympathetic fight-or-flight overdrive right back into a parasympathetic resting state, stopping your deep core reserves from being drained.
So these 5 elements, they aren't ancient history. They are a highly advanced dynamic map of your body's biological and emotional operating system, and you have the password to the manual override. So, take a deep breath right now. Seriously, let it out slowly. And ask yourself, how are you going to use this built-in physiological lever to master your own internal universe today? Thanks for exploring this amazing source material with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.